So I'm the type of person who, in most things, has to do everything consistently and kind of has to be perfect and just try to always be the best that I can. And so this quote kind of relates to me. Huxley once said, "The only completely consistent people are the dead." You know, to me that also means that that's kind of another way of saying, you know, like no one is perfect, and like no matter how hard you try, you can always be the best you can be, but it's not always going to be, you know, like the best. It's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be consistent. For me, something that I always try to do and try my best in was softball growing up. And, you know, I would always be really hard on myself, especially mostly in high school, when my two older sisters, or I have a twin sister and my other sister's a year older, so they were both made the varsity team. And my freshman year, I ended up making the JV team just because I was an outfielder, and the coach said that we had enough outfielders on varsity. So he said I can play on JV and just do the best out there, and whenever they needed more outfielders, he'll move me up. So I ended up getting moved up my sophomore year, but you know, I was really hard on myself. I ended up like crying in front of him, like why can't I play with my sisters on varsity? Like always just trying my best and always beating myself up. And you know, whenever I would make an error or get yelled at, I'm the type of person, if I get in trouble, then I'll just start crying, and I don't know, I just always have to like try my best and be the best. And also because of that, that also makes me very competitive. I once went to a Christian camp called Hume Lake, and they would have these really big, crazy rec games that we are supposed to play for fun. So just playing something for fun isn't really something I understand, and I always have to do my best. So we were playing Steal the Bacon in a giant mud pit, and when I was in there, what did I do exactly? Well, I pretty much ended up tackling someone and got kicked out. So that kind of showed me like, wow, like I would get kicked out of a game at a Christian camp. And another thing that I was always really hard on was I was really close with my history teacher my junior year of high school, because he was just like an awesome teacher. And I don't know about you guys, but if I really like a teacher, then I want to try extra hard in that class. And I would always, I'm a horrible test taker, so I would always do really bad on the test, and I would always, you know, like try not to cry whenever I got a bad test grade back, and thinking like, oh, like he hates me now because I did bad in his class. But it's funny, like now, like I went back to high school because I found out I was diagnosed with ADD and ADHD, so it's really hard for me to pay attention and understand things. So I thought I had to go back and kind of explain myself, like I actually was trying in your class, I just, like my brain didn't want to like pay attention. So overall, like I think Huxley is saying that no matter how hard you try, like you can't be the best, and I think everyone should keep trying to just be the best that they can be, but to not to understand that your best won't be perfect.
All right, I like the fact that you opened with a little bit of self-disclosure and you've got a good example there. The transition to the topic was a little awkward. It wasn't quite clear how you were going to interpret it, but once you got there, I thought it was original and reasonable under the circumstances. I do think that you still need a little bit more of a preview, but you've got a good personal story to tell, and there are actually a couple of personal stories that you mix in. And the nice part about the content is that you're able to give us some particulars and some examples, and it's always easier when you're talking about something that you know firsthand and you just feel like you're talking to people about, well, here's what happened to me, and you tell the story about it and how frustrated you felt, and how here's a particular situation. I'm not yelling at the coach, I'm crying at the coach. I want to play with my sisters, that kind of thing. And when people talk that way, they sound more like they're human beings. They sound like they're giving a speech as opposed to lecturing at people. They're just talking to us, and I like the fact that you did that quite a bit in the speech. Your voice is fine. There's no problem there. In fact, I thought the pacing was really solid. There weren't a bunch of hesitations. Your gestures are a little bit limited. You do have this tendency to kind of hold your own hand. Sometimes it's like this and then like that. So we want you to be engaged. I thought there were times when you were fine, but other times where it was a little bit problematic. The same thing with the eye contact. Sometimes you do look at people in the audience and it feels pretty solid, but that's not very consistent. I think you look up, you talk to us for a second, then you start thinking about your story, and then it's just back into your thinking to yourself instead of talking to the audience. And so even though it often starts off pretty well, it doesn't always end up in the same place, and I think you want to be more consistent on that. I like the fact that at the end you did come back to the point that you were trying to make, so that helps make it a little bit more coherent. And I think also during the speech you got a little bit more relaxed during the presentation. I think in the first minute or so you seemed a little more tense and uncertain, and as you went on and the stories got personal and you talked about them, you also relaxed a little bit, and I think that comes across to the audience too.